The reason you want out is the same reason no one would want in. It's 14 words. That's it. My business coach said those to me in 2018, and they cost me $1 million to understand. Hey there, I'm the real Jason Duncan. And if you've ever felt successful and stuck at the same time, this video is just for you. By 2018, I'd built something that looked like the American dream. I had an LED lighting retrofit and electrical contracting company in Nashville. We had made the Inc. 5000 list 2 times. We had been on the Entrepreneur 360 list. We'd made Small Business of the Year here in Nashville multiple times. And we had $1 million in EBITDA that year, profit. I mean, not revenue, profit, real money. And so from the outside, I was winning. My wife and I had recently bought what we thought was our forever home, our dream home. We had 2 kids who were healthy. And I was a former pastor who had become a school teacher and then lost my teaching job in 2011 and then rebuilt my whole life from scratch. And then 7 years into that, I was successful by every measure that anyone could see. And I thought I'd arrived, but I hadn't. I'd walked into a cage so comfortable that I didn't know it was a cage. And I want to tell you how I found out. Because what happened to me happens to almost every successful person at some point. And sadly, most of them never see it coming. His name was BJ Howard. He had been my business coach for several years, first one I'd ever hired. And in late 2018, I sat across from him and I told him, "Hey, I'm ready to sell the business." And he looked at me for a second, what seemed like an eternity. And then he said the 14 words. The reason you want out is the same reason no one would want in. Now, I didn't get it at first, and I pushed back. I mean, I had $1 million in profit. I had a lot of employees. I had systems, sort of. I mean, why wouldn't somebody want in? And then he said it again. He said it slower. The reason you want to sell this business is because you're burned out. And you're burned out because every decision runs through you. Every client relationship depends on you. Every decision, every problem ends up on your desk. And so if you leave, the business dies. And no buyer wants $1 million of profit that only exists if the previous owner stays. So I built a multi-million-dollar job, not a multi-million-dollar business. And then in 2019, things got worse. A business partnership went sideways. It was very painful, and it consumed about 75% of my attention for almost the whole year. I wasn't in the business. I was in a fight about the business. And not only did I have to deal with the business partner issue, but I also had a family crisis that was going on at the same time. Now, thank God, the family crisis worked itself out, but it still sucked at the time. And it took a lot of emotional energy from me. And not only that, a third thing was going on. I had a best friend of mine at the time who happened to also know what was going on in the business. He also knew what was going on with my private family crisis that we were dealing with. But still, he chose to screw me out of a real estate deal that ended up costing me about $180,000 in profit that I could have used to help offset the loss that year. So 3 things all at once. So in 24 months, the company went from $1 million in profit to nearly $1 million in losses, a $2 million swing. Because the moment I wasn't there to hold the whole thing together, it fell apart. Now, BJ was right. The business looked like $1 million success story. That's what it looked like from the outside. Everybody would say, "Oh, Jason, you're so successful." But it was a trap. And it was a trap I couldn't leave. And that's when I started paying attention to something that I'd missed for 7 years before that. I call it the golden cage. A golden cage is any lie that looks like something that you'd want. I mean, the gold is what makes it attractive, but the cage is the truth that's underneath that. And you want to know what makes it so dangerous? Is that people don't get forced into golden cages. They climb in willingly and they build them with their own hands and they decorate them. I did. And they defend them to anyone who tries to point out that there are bars that they're living behind. And so mine was a business. Um, you know, I'd built this business because I wanted freedom. And if I'm being honest, it was the most unfree that I'd ever been. And look, golden cages don't only live in business. They live everywhere successful people live. The spouse who measures a good marriage by the fact that they haven't fought in years, but then misses how far apart they've quietly drifted. Or the executive who can't leave a job they hate because the golden handcuffs feel like safety. Or maybe it's the provider who thinks paying for everything is the same as being present for anything. Or the high earner who's financing a lifestyle on debt to prove something to people whose opinions really don't count. Or maybe it's the parent working every weekend for the kids, but not realizing those kids would trade all of it for one afternoon they had with mom or dad's full attention. Or maybe it's the entrepreneur who calls 70-hour weeks the grind and wears it like a badge of honor while missing every one of his daughter's recitals. Every one of those is a golden cage. The pattern's pretty simple. You can see it. Something looks like success, so you chase it. You get it, and then you notice quietly at first that it's costing you more than it's giving you. And by the time you see it clearly, you've built so much of your identity around the thing that leaving it seems impossible. How would I leave this? And the gold is what makes it attractive. The cage is why you can't get out. Now, here's the part that'll probably mess with your head. The most successful people are the most deceived. And it's not because they're stupid. It's not at all. Because the lies that trap them, they don't look like lies. They look like their biggest wins. I mean, think about that for a second. If somebody told you a lie that sounded obviously bad, you'd reject it. I mean, nobody falls for give me $20 and I'll give you nothing back. Obviously, you're not going to fall for that. The lies that actually run your life are the ones that are dressed up like achievements. Maybe it's the job title you worked on 10 years to earn, or the revenue number you hit last quarter, but you still want more, or the house you bought to prove that you'd made it, or the identity you spent your whole adult life building. Now, these aren't fake. The revenue's real, the house is real, the title is real, but they become lies when you build your whole life around protecting them. And somewhere along the way, you lose the very thing you were hoping that they would give you. I wanted to build a business so that I could have a better life. And I ended up with a business that had eaten my life. And that's a golden cage. I'm a big fan of the book of Proverbs, and King Solomon wrote this in Proverb 14:12. He says, there's a way that seems right to a person, but its end is the way of death. Now, you don't have to share my faith for that sentence to matter to you, because you can read that as pattern recognition. That's what Solomon was doing. The things that seem right are the things that'll kill you quietly because you don't question them until it's too late. So, how do you know if you're sitting in one of these cages right now? Now, I'm going to give you 3 signs, and you got to be honest with yourself on each one. Sign 1, you can't leave for 2 weeks without things falling apart. Now, it doesn't matter what the thing is. It could be a business, a team, a household, a calendar. If whatever it is, if the structure you've built can't hold together for 14 days without you at the controls, you haven't built something. You've become the thing. The machine doesn't run. You're the machine. That's sign number 1. Sign number 2 is the people you love feel distant, even though you're providing for them. Now, this one's probably the hardest one to hear. You tell yourself you're doing all of this for them, and maybe you are. Maybe that's the way it started. But if your spouse feels like a roommate and your kids remember you more for what you gave them than the time you spent with them, you're paying for the gold with the very thing the gold was supposed to buy. That's not provision. That's a trade-off. And that's not what you want, is it? That's a trade-off that you never consciously agreed to. That's sign 2. Now, the third sign that you're in a cage is that you've redefined freedom as more money later. And this is the sneakiest one. It sounds responsible. I'll work hard now, I'll retire early, and then I'll live. But later is a country no one's ever actually visited. Later never comes. You either build a life you don't want to escape from, or you keep renting freedom from a future that may actually never arrive. Now, if you've nodded at even one of these things I've said, the gold has started to show its bars. And that doesn't mean you're stuck, because, as my mom always said, awareness is the key to recovery. You can't walk out of a cage you can't see. But now, hopefully, you can see this one, which means you have a choice that you didn't have a few minutes ago before you started watching this video. I said at the start that 14 words cost me $1 million to understand. Well, let me give you 5 that might save you from the same trip. The gold is the lie. The gold is the lie. I mean, say that to yourself the next time you catch yourself defending something that's slowly costing you the thing that you actually wanted. The gold is the lie. Now, if any of this landed, I want you to know that I write a weekly newsletter called What's Real. And it's where I go deeper on this type of stuff. And every week I pick one lie that most people believe and one truth that they don't. And I lay them both out. It's totally free, and the link's in the description. So pay attention. That's the whole game. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and I'll see you next week.